All right, we're going live right now. Just give it a second. We got to go live on TikTok as well. So we'll give it just a second to get live on TikTok. All right. And welcome to our Friday live show, everybody. It runs every Friday at 7 Central, same time. I'm your host, John Lawyer. My background was a soldier in Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan for, 12 out of the first 15 years of my adult life. And now I'm a spiritual guide and a seeker, really looking to have open conversations with people and see if we can be more open-minded and create more kind of peace and unification in the world. Each week we've got a different co-host guest, and I'm honored to introduce you to Jessie Torres. She's a peak performance coach and life strategist. And throughout this live stream, I'm going to have her website scrolling across the ticker. And there's also going to be a permanent description in the permanent podcast and YouTube that will have that as well. Jessie, I think it's always better when people kind of introduce themselves and tell us about themselves. So I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, John. I really appreciate it. And I love the way you described yourself, kind of like this huge, big thing that you really are, having done what you've done. And now you're this spiritual connector, which I love. And I would say it's similar. So I have never seen combat, nor have I been in the military, but I have been in my own combat, quote unquote,
Right.
of my journey, right? And my own, what I call divine choreography, right, of my life. And throughout that journey, it's created an insatiable hunger to understand human beings and to understand what is our journey here on Earth, right? And how do we come back to our core essence, where that beautiful divine perfection of spirit actually came here, right? And then we became these people, right? That we were labeled with a name, and then we created an identity and all these things, and all that to come to the point where we unpack all of it and come back to the divinity and the beauty of the spirit, right? So my journey has been that of going through my own traumas, tragedies, or whatever, and getting to a point where apathy was where I landed, and was wishing somebody would blow the red light so I could be complete with this life. Because if this is the life I was living, it wasn't worth it. It was too painful for me. And from that, it was an act of kindness that woke me up, which is why I'm such an advocate for kindness and how much that can change the trajectory of someone's life. It saved mine. And in that gave me the courage to get out of my situation so that now I can start living. And that was now 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I was 38 years old and I had no clue who I was. And my entire world turned upside down now. And I had 3 kids that I needed to take care of. And I did not even know how to drive out of my own city. So in that, it created an insatiable hunger to understand. And from that understanding, or that seeking, as you put it, it gave me a desire to learn. And from there, I have done so many things to get me to this place where I want to just help humanity get out of suffering.
That's powerful. That's a powerful story. I love the way you ended that, to help humanity get out of suffering. I think it's such a noble cause, and to give back to give back to the world, to give back to the universe. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing that. For the viewers, if you guys have any questions for Jessie or me, just post them. We'll try to get through them throughout the show. And I'm wondering, Jessie, when it comes to spirituality, it's this like very amorphous, kind of vague thing that everybody has different definitions for. I was kind of wondering, like, what's your definition of spirituality?
Oh, that's such a great question. So we're talking spirituality, not religion.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So that's how I phrase it. Spirituality to me is the connection to God's source, universe, whatever it is that's telling our heart to beat. I was raised devout Catholic. I became Christian, and then in my own journey, I've gone through my own spiritual awakening and my connection with, I call God, because it's easier.
Sure.
I don't know what that is, right? But I know that it's omnipotent. I know that it's magnificent. And throughout my journey in the quest to seek, I've had work with plant medicine and apprentice with a shaman for a year. So I've had what I can describe as one human being, my connection to what I believe was God, because I can't put words to that feeling. And from that came this desire to help people feel that. In fact, that was the message. That was the download, if you will. It's like, because I was like, why am I worthy of receiving this feeling? And in that, it was, because you can feel this always. And so I knew in that moment that I was meant to bring that feeling. Like, why don't we feel that way? One of the things that I'm fascinated by and I kind of geek out on are people that have experienced NDEs, right? Which are near-death experiences.
Sure.
And I went at one period of my life, I just was watching story after story after story after story. And as I was listening, I was like, wow, like each and every story was different, but the same. You know, they all felt this omnipotence, this presence, this, and to put it in simple words, complete acceptance to the point that there's a Dr. Zach Bush, and he did this conversation, and he basically goes in, and he's the doctor that they call when somebody in the hospital room has flatlined. Okay, and he runs in there and he brings them back. Basically, that's his job. And he was in an interview, and he stated how it was over and over and over again. He would do this, and the people that he would bring back would say, "Why did you do that?" And he was like so perplexed. He's like, "What do you mean? Like, I just brought you back, like you're alive again."
Right.
But because they felt 100% acceptance in that moment of touching God's spirit, they weren't the father, they weren't the husband, they weren't the guy that had to make money, they weren't the guy that messed all things up, or the woman that screwed up and made all these mistakes. They weren't that. And now bring them back, and they're back in the pain body, right? Now I have to cope with shame or all the things that I've been dealing with in my human experience. Over there, I didn't have to do any of it. I was just accepted. And so my quest is to bring that for people. So to me, spiritual connection is that divinity. It's that beauty. It's that awe-inspiring moment that I think we can all have in physical form. We're just not taught to.
Oh, that's beautiful. I resonate with pretty much all of that. And you've said so much there that I don't even know where to start, but I'll give it a shot. I love NDEs as well because, you know, I spend a lot of time thinking about consciousness, because I think whether you're spiritual, religious, scientific, whatever, consciousness comes up as a theme, right? And so I think when you look at NDEs, it gets really into the fact that we obviously have consciousness. Like, you know, science can't get behind it. It knows it exists, it postulates it exists, but it can't prove it, right? And I think being in touch with that, it sounds like you are. And it sounds like you have an understanding of it and you want to share that with others. So that's amazing.
Absolutely. You know, one way that I bridge the gap for people to understand, and I absolutely love this, like I became a trainer for the Institute of Heart Math. Are you familiar?
I'm not.
So the Institute of Heart Math has been studying the rhythm of the heart for the last almost 40 years.
Okay.
And how they describe the frequency of our heart, right? So our heart is that first organ, right? Before the brain engages, right? And goes into thought, right? It's the heart. It's what gives us life. And when we talk about like the woo-woo conversation of like, you know, energy and frequency and, oh, I love your vibe and all that, this kind of puts into context from a science perspective that in order for the doctors to listen to our heart beat, it's a rhythm, it's a vibration, it's beating, it's a sound. So it's emitting frequency, right? And so what they have done is it's called a torus field, and it's basically the energetic vibration that comes out of the rhythm of your heart. It's measurable by science 3 to 4 feet from the body, right? So if you're in anger, if you're in worry, if you're in shame, if you're in doubt, if you're in fear, any of those depleting emotions, and you were wearing a heart rate variability monitor, your heartbeat would be chaotic all over the place, right? Now, when you're in a renewing emotion like appreciation or gratitude or love or compassion, right, your heartbeat is now coherent. And what happens in that moment of coherence where the heart is communicating to the mind, it opens up to universal intelligence. Now you got those aha moments, right? Like, oh my God, I got this idea, aha, right? Because you're in a state of openness in communication with God's source.
Yeah.
right? And so in a state of contraction, we're in depletion, and our body is literally fighting to keep us alive. And so when we talk about energy or frequency and we talk about the physical form, like we have access to this spirit scientifically, because how do you explain intuition, right? How do you
Right.
explain those aha moments, right? They just kind of like, oh my God, I just got it, right? It's
Yeah.
it's this almost like you're an open vessel to receiving. And
Yes.
it's measurable by science because they can feel the heartbeat and how it vibrates. So I love Bruce Lipton, it's an amazing guy,
Sure.
and he
Yeah.
studies all of that, right? So he says, ask the question when you wake up in the morning, what will you choose to feed the field? And what he means by that is the energetic field of our planet, right? It is comprised of all of us, right? So when you're being taught by society to, grind, 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 you'll sleep when you die. Like, if you're not gripping the steering wheel and drinking 5 frappa somethings, then you're not working hard enough, right? And we have a
Yeah.
very exhausted society, and we have, we're fighting against each other and all this stuff. That energy is in the field. And so if we're going to beat this thing, and what do I mean by that? I mean, like, bring back our planet to some sense of sovereignty, then we each have power to feed the field of energy in this world of love, of care, of compassion, of empathy, of benevolence. And we're all empowered to do that. So when people like watch the news and they're like, oh my God, I feel helpless. No, you're not helpless, because your energy matters, how you see the world, to forgive quicker, to be kind every single day. Ask yourself, whose life will be better because of me today? And if you ask that question every single day, you get playfully curious, right? Yeah, I did this at the DMV once, right? And I was running that question, and I'm like, boy, the DMV is kind of dreary, and nobody's smiling around here,
Sure.
And I was like, okay, this is a challenge accepted, right? I'm talking to this lady. She's not even looking at me. She's like, driver's license registration. And I'm just like, okay, how am I going to get to this lady? She had pretty earrings. So I'm like, oh, I like your earrings. And she's like, oh, yeah. I'm like, do you like working here? Yeah, it's a job, And she wouldn't answer. And she's like, but you know what? I'd rather, I don't know. I'd rather work at a cemetery. I'm like, wow. Why is that? She goes, oh, you just talk to people every single day. And I just, I'm like, oh, I totally get that. I said, I'm a coach. I talk to people all day. I said, but do they have to be dead? And that was the first time she cracked a smile and looked at me, and she laughed, and she goes, I guess not. And so then we started talking, and I was like, there she is. Right. And now I can compliment her smile. And it's just fun. But we all get a choice of what we choose to feed the field of energy.
Yeah. There's so much wisdom there. I love that you say that it's a choice. Life really is a choice. We talk about that on this channel quite a bit. And I think you show a lot of intuition yourself there when you're talking about all the, the energy, about how our own energy radiates out of us, and how we're receiving energy radiating into us from others and from the world. And I love what you talked about as far as being in receive mode, because I feel like we do get blocked off, right? And we get in this status quo of, like you talked about, like that pull of society, that conveyor belt that we are put on as children. And that keeps us out of being in receive mode to that divine intuitive thing of the universe that kind of will send us pretty amazing stuff if we're open to it, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always say you have to have a gatekeeper at the forefront of your mind.
Yeah.
And it's like I say, you wouldn't let somebody walk into your beautiful white carpet with muddy shoes, right? Why would you let thoughts infiltrate? And they can, like if you are glued to the news 24/7. Lord knows that the news just shows us man's inhumanity to man, right? You might get a little 15-second splurb of a random act of kindness, but for the most part,
we don't get fed good news.
Exactly.
I mean, like you said, we may get fed a segment where someone overcame something, but those are the exception to the stories that we're fed. We're fed all of the worst parts of the world, and so then we start to believe in our core and in our subconscious and our everything below our awareness, we start to believe that's the way the world's is. We believe that it's this thing that is less, and it's complicated, and it's negative, and when in reality, like you said, the world has always been this way. It's just human. And there's the negative, but there's all, you know, our universe is balanced, our world is balanced. So there's also the light, there's the positive, and
That's right.
um,
And
I
you know
think
what?
we choose to see that.
Light is still winning. Like I want the world to know
Absolutely.
that light is still winning, right? So it's like your thank yous and your kindness and your compliments don't go like in the garbage. Like they are needed, right? Because light is
Yeah.
still winning. Otherwise we'd be in massive chaos, right?
Yeah.
We would be a destruction. So if we understand that and we can bring light into even the darkest moments, we can shift it. We can shift it. Like, yes, there's a lot. My mom she'll watch the news and she'll call me and she's like, "Oh my God, Jessie, the world is so terrible." And I'm like, "No, Mom, it's not." I said, "There's a lot of terrible things happening, yes, but there's
Sure.
so much good.
Right.
You know, get a box of tissue and Google a random acts of kindness and just watch the YouTube videos, right?" And so I
Yeah.
love people that do that, right? It's like there's so
Yeah.
much beauty.
Yeah, there's babies being born, and people are finishing their degrees, and they're getting married, and they're falling in love, and they're living their purpose. They're finally finding what their purpose is and living it. There's all this great stuff happening around us all the time.
That's
I
right.
think it is definitely a beautiful thing, and that's if you stop for a minute and can slow things down and pull yourself out of that cycle of sameness, then you can start to see these vivid things and this color all around our lives that we're conditioned not to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
You talked about, and this kind of gets back into something you mentioned earlier, which is that you talked about getting out of apathy.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's part of this is breaking
Yeah.
out of this cycle. Like, how do you tell people to start that process of getting out of apathy?
Well, you know, again, for me, it kind of, I call it short circuit moments, right? At the time, I didn't even know to call it kindness.
Right.
I just knew that my situation at home had gotten so bad that I didn't see a way out. My
Right.
relationship was very abusive, and divorce wasn't an option in my eyes. And I felt like I failed. There was just so many things that went on that the only way out is just somebody take me out. Please blow the red light so I could be done because I wouldn't take my own life because of my children.
Right.
And so when these people treated me kindly, it short circuited my brain. And so I guess I thought, I don't know what this feeling is, but if it's available, then life is worth living. And it gave me the courage. So what I would say to your audience is like, you know, apathy is a state of mind. One of the things that's important, be the seeker, right? Now we
Right.
have so much information. Like I love authors. One of the first books, because I never would read, I'd always fall asleep. But when I went on my quest, I was like, okay. And one of the books that I picked up, very first book, was The Unmistakable Touch of Grace by Cheryl Richardson. And I don't remember the whole book, to be honest, but I remember there was one sentence in there that shifted me from believing that I could have a different life. It's like was so in a construct of my belief systems because I thought this is how I was raised. This is how life is. This is how men are. This is what I'm supposed to do as a woman. Like all the rules, right? The
Right.
construct. And then one sentence in there said, wait, what? I can believe differently? Like I have that kind of a choice. I don't know what this is, but I know that each time that tiny spark that was alive in me was getting fanned even more. So there's so much information out there. And if you feel apathetic, reach out. Freaking now you can chat GPT how to get out of apathy, for God's sakes, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
the thing is that there's more in you than you know. There's more in you than that you can see right now. You might think there's no way out. You might say, yeah, Jessie, that was good for you, but you don't understand my situation. There's nothing I can do. And what you don't realize is that there's more courage, there's more resilience in you than you can believe right now. Sometimes we don't know what we've got until our knees hit the floor. And
Yeah.
so my invitation to you is to take action now. Don't wait until your knees hit the floor because that's a hard place to come up from, but trust that you can.
Yeah. No, I absolutely talk about that frequently, which is that we're whole inside, even if we can't see it, even if we don't know it, it's there, right? Like that
That's right.
wholeness, that divine thing, or the capital S with a capital self, or capital self with an S, right? Like that's like, it's there. We just
Yeah.
have to discover it, right? And the path can be complicated, but it's also very short if you think about it in real terms.
Yeah.
You talked about at one point you said I had no clue who I was, and I can relate to that. I've been at that point where I came home from Afghanistan, been overseas for all those years, and I was like, you know what, I don't know who I am. Like, I don't know. I had no identity. I didn't know how to heal. I knew I abstractly knew I needed to heal, but I didn't know how to do it. So, how do you what do you think people can look to if they're in that situation to take that bit of light and then expand it?
My invitation would be to speak on it, to talk to somebody, to share that you matter enough, right? Because what happens is when we go so internal, like it can become a prison. It can become a mental prison to be in your thoughts, because you're in your thoughts and in your own construct of what you believe, and you don't know to seek a different belief system. So just sharing with someone, trust that you matter enough to share, speak on it, journal on it, allow what's in here to come out, and know that there is another possibility. I mean, when I came out of that, I was clueless. I didn't even know how to drive out of my own city. I was like, you know, how to buy a Thomas guide. That's how long ago this was, right? I think MapQuest was just getting actually out. And so it was like, I had to. I didn't know, but it was in survival. I was just like, I need to. I have 3 kids that are depending on me. So again, take that first step. Speak to somebody. Right now, there's so many systems, there's so many organizations that are willing to just listen, right? We have like even suicide hotlines that will just hear you out. You know, like there's so many resources. Trust that no matter how meek your situation seems, that there is someone that will hear you. And when you get it out of you, there's a power in it. There's
Right.
something, it awakens something in you. These people that treated me kindly will never know who they woke up. Like I wish I could remember their names and I could find them. They were in a class. I'd have to dig through all my stuff, but I would love to thank them. Right. And so just know that you matter and speak to somebody, get it out of you.
Yeah, that's amazing advice, because so often I think people think, oh, I'm going through this tough time, and it's got to be lonely. It's just the way it is. It's just the way life is, and they get conditioned to accept that, and then people get comfortable. I think people get comfortable with their loneliness.
They normalize it.
Exactly. It becomes this like sanctuary that isn't a good thing. It's a false sanctuary that doesn't really benefit you in any real way, but your mind's telling you, well, I'm alive, so this must be okay, and really
And
that's
it's
not true.
familiar. It's familiar. I know this
Yeah.
pain. I don't know
Yeah.
life out there. I don't know
Yeah.
what that's going to take from me, right? Or what it's going to take for me to get there. What if I fail at that? At
Right.
least here I'm comfortably
Yeah.
numb.
Change is dangerous, right? In our mind, change is this dangerous thing, and we are creatures of habit, and we're creatures of bad habits as much as we are creatures of good habits.
Very much. Very much. Just
No,
know
I
that whatever your fear is, there's life on the other side of that. And
Right.
in A Course in Miracles, it says there's only ever 2 things.
Yeah.
There's love and there's fear, right?
Right.
And fear is just a call for love, right? So if you're scared, I get it. I see you, right? Like, and just soften that part, because fear is a part of our humanity, right? We need to know when to run from the bear. The problem is if that fear always drives, fear thinks the bear is always coming.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
know that you are powerful enough to just lean into that edge, and there's something beautiful always waiting on the other side. Whether it's you get to see your own power or your own bravery, or, taking action for yourself. And I think one of the important parts is to love yourself enough to know that you matter enough to take action for.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we're taught, we talked about being conditioned by society earlier, and also part of that same conditioning. Okay, we're not aware, but it's also we have very much as a society rejected teaching people about self-love, and that's what you're talking about, that acceptance of self and that love of self, and then that also completely changes your perspective on obviously how you view yourself. But suddenly then it starts to change how you interact and view with the universe and the world around you.
Yeah, and here's the thing that's beautiful. And when you ask like what should they do? Get a mentor. Get a
Right.
mentor, get somebody in your corner who believes in you beyond what you can see right now. Okay? One of the most beautiful things that I love in the journey and the people that I work with, right? My outcome is to bring you back to the innocence of a child, right? That beautiful, playful essence of you that goes on the playground, is not concerned or about judgment or anything, goes up to another friend and says, "Hi, you want to play? Yeah, let's go play." And it's that simple, right? And so the most beautiful thing is when you fall in love with you, when you fall in love with all aspects of you, you see humanity through a different set of lenses. And it's the most beautiful thing because now when you stop judging yourself, you start to recognize you have more compassion for people. Like, one of the things about my story is I've had both my brothers murdered. Now, 30 years apart, okay? Totally different stories. And my little brother as much as last year, right? As close as last year, where I'm doing this, I'm a coach, I'm helping people, I think I'm living my purpose. And I thought, I've seen my darkest days. I'm listening, and I'm taking all my journey, and I'm alchemizing people's pain into beauty. This uppercut, right? I felt like I was uppercut. I was like, no, I thought I see my darkest days. Like, seriously, there's another lesson for me. Like, what the frick? And in that, to be able to still hold strong to my belief system, it was like, oh, I have to eat my own medicine right now. My emotional home has been worry or sadness. I go to sadness. Some people go to rage. Mine is sadness. I'm very internal. When my little brother was killed, I went to rage. I'd never felt rage before. Even with everything I'd been through in my life, I never felt rage like I did when he died. And I was so angry. I was angry at God. I wasn't angry at God because I had a different belief system. I was angry at God when my older brother was killed. I was angry at society. I was angry at my brother. I was angry at the guy that killed him. I was angry at freaking Compton. I was like, oh, like, whoa, people, like, what's going on in this world, right? But in that moment, I knew that I had to, again, my dream is to bring light into the darkest moments of each of our experiences, alchemize pain. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm in it right now. I'm in so much pain. How can I find the beauty in this? What's the good in this? Like, when everything inside of you wants to argue and say there's nothing good about this, right? And like, what could be good about this? And in the deepest moments of my sorrow, because I've conditioned this so much, I was able to see his daughters. He left 9 children. Okay. 3 with the oldest ones who had different mothers, who had not really been all together at one time, who acted like they've known each other their entire life. The beauty of them coming together on the heels of this pain was just magnificent. And I could feel that. People that wrote about my brother and the difference he had made in their lives. My family coming together like I'd never seen before. I was like, there was beauty all around. So in the deep part of my sorrow, I can still see it. And when we get to that place of our own self-acceptance and trusting the divine order of everything, it is all in divine order, even the suck. And if we're able to see through those lenses, you're going to find the beauty. You're going to trust the divine. You're going to say, you know what, this sucks. Do I wish it could be different? Every single day. Do I miss my brother? 100%. Do I wish I could script it? Like, is this what I signed up for, God? Holy crap, right? But it isn't. So, and when you argue with reality, you lose 100% of the time. So if this is it, if this is the divine choreography of my journey, then God, what do you want with me? And in that, seeking those moments, and to still, my question was from the person that killed my brother, I was like, what the heck happened in your life? What was your childhood? What did you experience that made you believe it was okay to take someone's life? Right? That's how my brain works now. And it's this most amazing thing to be able to see with compassion because I trust the divine order.
Yeah. You've talked about compassion. You mentioned grace as well. And That's really an inspirational story. I was trying to think of the word to use, but it is an inspiring story because I think it shows a way ahead. And I mean, no one's path is going to look exactly like your path, but I think one thing about sharing our journeys, and you just shared this powerful part of your journey, is that hopefully someone can take that and use it to inform their own, their own
Absolutely.
experience. Yeah.
I know that sometimes the darkness can feel so dark, right? And like I said, when my first brother was killed 30 years ago, um, it was such a shock because I mean it's like you see this on the movies. It doesn't happen to you. Like it just
Right.
it was so shocking and it was such a stupid. It was ridiculous, and at that point I didn't have the tools. I was still
Right.
in my marriage, in my
Yeah.
abusive marriage, trying to
Sure.
survive, right? And I turned my back on God, spirit, universe, whatever. I just like I'm flipping it off. I'm just like, you know what? I don't even know if you exist. And if you
Sure.
do, I
Absolutely.
hate you for taking my brother.
Right.
And it was a whole different contracted, like it really took me out. And it was it was in a moment that my brother actually presented himself to me. Like I saw, and he was standing, it was all white, and you can see what looked like people, but it's like, you just wonder, you doubt, like, what am I seeing? Like, am I seeing this? Am I feeling it? But it looked like bodies. And all he did was with his hand, he just gestured and he just did this. And he said, Jess, everything is as it's supposed to be.
Sure.
And in that moment, I didn't understand fully what it meant, but it brought me calm. And I knew he was okay. And I was able to navigate from that. And from that now my little brother, 30 years later, oh, my heels are dug in deeper with spirit. I'm just like, okay, all right, universe, what freaking, this one was an uppercut. So what do you want me to get here? What do you want me to see? How do I bring light into this dark moment? How do I alchemize this? And they were such complete different stories. And because when my older brother was killed, my little brother was 15. And he idolized our older brother. And from his death, my little brother was seeking another brother. He was seeking a male role model. And so he got into trouble and he got connected to gangs but at this stage of his life, he was doing the best he had ever done. He was taking his little girls to school. He was helping them with homework. He actually even opened up a business called Resilience LLC, right? And so that's why it came as another shock, because I was like, no, like we had plans. We were going to speak on stages together. I used to tell him, you didn't go through this in vain. Like you can speak to a gangbanger. I could be the best coach in the world, but they won't hear me, but they'll hear you. Right? Like we're going to do this together, and we had these plans. So when this happened, it was like, oh my God. Right. But again, I'm constantly seeking for those moments of trusting God and the divine order, spirit. Okay, this is the reality. I'm not going to argue because it is. Do I like it? No. But here I am. How do I alchemize it?
And that seems to be a theme throughout our conversation here, and you talking about your story. This desire to learn, a quest to seek, always, it's growth, right? It's this growth that we have. And I think that's a powerful thing for our audience to understand, is that we can always be learning, we can always be seeking.
Absolutely.
You and I have both had trauma, and I agree with you. I don't think any trauma is better or worse than any other trauma. It's just trauma, right? It's just what it is. And so we've both gone through that. We've seen it. What do you think is the most often repeated myth about trauma that people should understand?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question. The biggest myth is that you don't have any, right? So because people think that it has to be like a rape or a murder or or a blunt trauma, right? And trauma, by the definition that I've come up with, is whatever the child made meaning of in the moment of experience, right? So I give this simple example. A child goes to the grocery store with his mom. He's playing in the aisle. Mom goes to the end of the aisle to grab something. She can see him, but he can't see her. He lifts up his head and goes, Mom, freaked out, thinks he was left behind. She's like, I'm right here. right? 10 seconds. But in that moment, the unconscious mind anchored, I could be left behind. I was abandoned, right? And so now mom goes to the store next day, child's a little bit more clingy. No, don't leave, mom, right? Now they go to the grocery store. He can't get her, lose sight of her. And he's holding on to her more. Now he's 35 and he's going through relationship after relationship after relationship because he's controlling, possessive, jealous, right? And he doesn't even know to know. He doesn't know to know, right? And so I have these 3 pillars of trauma. There's undiagnosed, unacknowledged, and unresolved. And these are the ones that drive us, right? So for him, that was undiagnosed. He didn't know to know, right? Like, I don't, what was it? And there's a line of questioning that I have to connect the thread. I'm like, what's your limitation today? Just share with me the stories, and I'm able to connect it to something. And there's like, oh my God, that in the grocery store, right? And all of a sudden it's just like, oh my God, that from that, like you couldn't have known to know. But then there's others like, oh, I was sexually abused. I know that, but I'm good. And they don't know, like they acknowledge that they went through a trauma, but they're mindsetting their way out of healing.
Right.
Because now they know, but they're not acknowledging the emotional trauma, the energetic trauma, the unconscious trauma that comes from that. When it's that obvious, right? Well, I had this thing happen and I'm good. It's like, but there's so much more that comes underneath that. And then the unresolved is when you don't go into it.
Right. No, I think that's it really is important. I'm so glad you talk about that, because I mean, I don't specifically coach on trauma. I'm call myself a higher purpose and transformational coach. So a little bit different than what you do. But I found that when I'm working with people, multiple times I've been working with them in a session, a one-on-one session, and suddenly we'll uncover a trauma. We weren't intending to do that day. It wasn't on the map, and it just happens. And it's something that they were completely unaware of. And I think that's really something valuable that the audience can take away from this, is what you were just talking about. Because I think that that speaks to these attachments that we have to our past, that we really sometimes don't even realize we're carrying all this weight. And sometimes we don't even realize we're pulling suitcases full of concrete, around with us.
And I work a lot with high level achievers that don't realize that they're chasing worthiness on their achievement. Right? And it's like a cat chasing its tail. It's never enough. It's never enough. It's like I get one, put it in the drawer, go to the next one. And they don't realize that they're running away from somebody who didn't believe in them, a father that told them they'd never amount to anything, a teacher that told whatever it is, right? And they don't know to know, and they think, well, life is good. Life is good. But they know that there's something knocking on their heart that says, you know what? I know I'm meant for more. I know I have good, but I'm not fulfilled, right? It's like, and then they feel guilty for wanting more. I have the house. I even have a boat. Family's good. But why am I so bleh, right? And they feel stuck. And they don't realize that there is another level to them, but they're in this stuck place because they don't realize that their worthiness isn't there. I actually coached a lady. She had hit her financial goal. She was in the $5 million club of her organization. And she, on paper, looked amazing. She was in the fitness arena. So she had a knocking body. She was, successful financially. She had 2 boys and a husband, had a great home, all this stuff. And her husband was ready to leave her, and she was massively depressed, right? But what she showed on social media was she's got it dialed in. And what we ended up finding for her was that when she was 10 years old, was told by a family friend that she would not only not be as good as her sister, but she would never be as thin as her sister. And so her whole life, she achieved a lot, but she was in depression. Her husband was ready to leave her because she wasn't ever present. She was on her phone 24/7. She was at the soccer game, but she was glued to her phone, right? And he's just like, I'm done. You're not here. And when she realized that, she was comparing herself not only to her sister, but she was comparing herself to herself of last year. This is how
Right.
bad it was. So she was in massive suffering. It was never enough, right? And she didn't know to understand. She just knew she was in a funk and she needed to do something. So I share that because you may not know, right? Again, you're just like, no, life is good. I'm good. But there's something more, that big audacious dream that you don't even share with anybody, right? Because you feel that either you'll be knocked down or that it's just too big. And who am I to live that big? Well, who are
Right.
you not to? Because
Yeah, and in
every
many,
spirit unleashed is magical.
no, it absolutely is magical in the most natural sort of way. And you know, that's great to hear. I think people need to hear that all these people out there have problems that they don't see. It's like, I think it was Albert Camus, or I think it was him, that said that, "Oh, I didn't realize that I was supposed to bring my mask along that everybody's wearing." Because everybody's wearing
Mm-hmm.
a mask pretending to be this thing that they're not, right? That they're happy, that they're content, that they're
Completely.
living the best life, that they're. So I think we can all, each of us, look at ourselves and say, am I being honest with myself? Am I being honest with the world around me?
Mm-hmm.
And that speaks to that alignment of mind, body, soul. And maybe we are healthy and our body's good, and maybe our mind is good and we're educated and we have wisdom and knowledge. But are we taking care of our soul, or vice versa? You could pretty much interchange any of those three things and say, are we in alignment of our mind, body, soul? And that's, I think, honesty with ourselves, and on it, because I mean, like, why lie to ourselves? And we lie to ourselves so much.
Very
Um,
much.
and that just causes us pain, right? It just causes
Mm-hmm.
suffering.
It does. But it seems invisible sometimes, again, to your point earlier, because they've normalized it, right? It's
Right.
just like, it's not bad. So I'll just stay here. But there's something that's calling their spirit. And masks, or heart armor, I call heart armor. Heart armor is just the armor that we put around our heart every single time we've been hurt, we've been let down. It's just like, now, Jesse, you want me to open that up? Oh, heck no. Right? Like, I say vulnerability is a superpower, right? When
Yeah.
you actually look up the word vulnerability, I'm like, no wonder nobody wants to be vulnerable. It's like literally saying, I'm going to get kicked in the, you know what?
Right.
And so I don't want that, but it's the most beautiful thing to do. And for me, my perspective is vulnerability gives you the ability to speak to the soul of another
Yeah.
versus the ear of another.
Yeah. And that goes hand in hand with authenticity, right? We know,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I see a positive movement towards authenticity in society. I think
Yeah.
sometimes people pretend to be authentic and they're actually not being authentic, which is
Right.
kind of like a catch-22, or
They're
whatever it
doing
is. But
authenticity versus being authentic.
yeah, but I think we're seeing it more. And just like you and I can sit here and have a conversation and say, yeah, I've had trauma. Yeah, I've had this stuff. Yeah, even I still struggle with it today. Like, and be authentic. That's vulnerable. That's relatable, because people suddenly they're thinking, oh, it's okay to say everything's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you think one of the most common obstacles is when people come to you?
Well, I actually put it on my website, 3 reasons why not to work with me.
Okay, I like that. That's fun.
One is if you are afraid of vulnerability.
Sure.
I love you, but it's just not our time, right?
Sure.
Another one is if you are not willing to let go of the old story,
Ah, I love
right?
that. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Because it's like sometimes you say one of the toughest things is they come like, here's my problem, Jesse. I need help with this problem. And I'm like, okay. And they're like this, and they're
I don't know. I love it.
and
It's
I'm like,
part of me.
okay,
Yeah.
here's the
Yeah.
thing to help you with the problem. And they're like, well, I mean, don't take my problem from me. And I'm like, I'm confused. You came here saying you don't want the problem. I'm trying to help you with the problem, but you hold on to the problem even more.
Yeah.
So my outcome is your happiness. Are you happy with the problem?
Right.
Well, no. Okay, well then are you ready to let it go? Right. And so that's why I put it clearly out there, because again, I'm not here to force. I'm not going to serve everybody. I know that. But I am going to serve the people that are ready to let go of the story and to write the new one. And like I tell people, after working with me, we get to this place, like I said, to the innocence, right? Where you've taken off all the masks, you've taken off all the armor, and you're literally in this beautiful raw beauty, and all you are witness to is like seeing yourself through the lenses of God or spirit, right?
Sure.
And you're just like, oh my God, I was this magnificence the whole time, right? And then from that place, now it's like, oof, it's the most gorgeous thing to witness. So from that, now the canvas is clean because you're in
Yeah.
conscious awareness now. You've pulled
Right.
out all the weeds from the unconscious mind and all the meaning it made, because we're meaning making machines, right? All the meanings that didn't serve you. And now you're witness to it. So now it's like you're aware, oh, that statement triggered me. Let me think about, why did it trigger me? And you can take the trail and you start to get masterful at it. But now you make a conscious decision of what to do with that trigger. Triggers are our friends to me because they're just another part of our edges that need our love.
Right.
Ooh, that triggered me. Okay, cool. Something's there in the unconscious mind that needs my attention. I'll handle it. Now, from a conscious state of being, how do I choose to move forward? So once you become to that place of raw beauty, now you get to decide. Here's the pen, here's the paintbrush. What do you want to create? Because now you don't have to be the identity that was created in an unconscious conditioning from wounding. You can do it from a place of your divinity, your beauty, seeing that you are this magnificent. And now you get to decide, who do I want to be? What do I want to do in life? How do I want to play? You know, there was a period in my time, John, that I had to find my smile.
Yeah.
Okay. Coming from, I had childhood abuse with my father, sexual abuse. Then I went into my first 18 years, and then my second 18 years with my husband, emotional, mental, verbal, and just domestic violence, right? And from my experience, if I smiled at someone, I was flirting. I was now a whore, pardon my language. I was now all these things that I was bringing into the experience. So I looked down at the ground. I just covered. I don't make a hi, how you doing? I don't make eye contact because it would get me in trouble.
Right.
To the point that I didn't know how to smile because I felt it was wrong. I was calling in something. It was dirty. And so to come from that place of like, wow, like, you know, I had a friend, he's kind of funny, but I was running late to this big thing, and you know, I was so serious because that's how I am. And he says, hey, how you doing? And I said, I'm great. And he's like, would you tell your face about it? And I said, oh my God, like, because I was so tight. I was so closed. And so there's opportunity to find when you come to that place of openness. It's like, smile. Like your smile can literally brighten somebody's day. It's so beautiful, right? So it's like you come alive for the first time. And now you get to decide who you get to be from a conscious state of being.
Yeah, you get to decide who you get to be. I feel like our audience could like write that down and and like use that as an affirmation. You know, I get to decide who I get to be.
Yeah. And I love that you said affirmation. So, you know, having worked with Tony Robbins as long as I did, so he would call things incantations. Right. And so I love that. And the thing is that, but when I was getting through my own alchemizing, I had mantras, if you will, all over. Like I buy those big giant Post-it notes and hang them on my wall. Right. And they're so powerful, right? When you're still in disbelief of who you are, like literally claiming, I am determined, diligent, and never quit. Like that's the first statement of my mantra, right? And you repeat it over and over and over again. And you just bring your body to the party. Let your body believe you, right? Like really step into what you're saying, right? And then repeat it over and over again. Make it a dance, you know, touch your body when you say I, right? Really change that frequency because your autonomic nervous system is used to the contraction of you beating yourself up. So you have to rewire the neural pathways. You have to give it a new direction. It's not enough just to recognize, right? Like when I coach people and I tell them, well, now you're in this awareness, but it doesn't end there. Now you got to condition it. You got to like be in this new, like you, right? This new normal. You've created a new threshold. So now if you don't condition it, the old neural pathways are going to take over because they've been with you your whole life, beating you up. right? So until you like create those mantras, your I am statements, you really claim, I call it the inner superhero, right? I love superheroes. So it's like we all have one. Trust that we all have one. And there's one inside each and every one of you.
Yeah, Mariah Carey, right? The hero lies in you. So,
Yes.
like, it's true, right? It's the way of things.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love that you worked with Tony Robbins for all those years, and like I read a lot, and I've read Awaken the Giant Within, and I think I took more notes on that book than I did any of the other 60 books I read during that time frame. And what books for you have really stood out that you think help people quite a bit?
Oh boy, there's so many. I would say one that made a really good impact on the consciousness understanding is The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer.
It's a great book.
Yeah. And as you go through his book, because he's got the surrender experiment, but the one that's really now wow is Living Untethered. And now you're really like getting the conditioning and understanding. Right. So that is one of my favorites. Oh my gosh. I mean, initially when I first started reading, I also read some of Brene Brown's books,
Sure.
Daring Greatly and some of those. But more when I got more into my own consciousness, there's a lot of spiritual books that I read that helped me open up to broader connection to source, right? So like I love Tony Robbins because he's making such an impact in the world. And it got to a point where I wanted more of that spirit conversation. I wanted to go beyond the human mind that, makes it move and mindset shifts, right? Which I think is powerful because we need that.
Yeah.
However, I wanted to not bypass this human journey. It's not always about just shifting your mindset.
Yeah.
We are not healing. We're not healing. And we know so much, right? We have seminars, we have workshops, we have the internet, we have all these resources, but we aren't healing. We
Right.
need to be with what happened in our journey, not run from it and mindset and power through, right? That's good to get you to a point. But when you want the expansion of your spirit, you have to be willing to be with every part of your journey. Forgiveness, like, forgive quicker, right? Like release that unforgiveness. And I work on this with my mom because, she's lost 2 sons. So, and I tell her, you're drinking poison every day that you don't forgive. Like and it's not about the other person. She's mad at my dad for what he did to me. I'm like, why? I'm good. I forgave him. Like, look at me. Like, I'm devoted to helping humanity. Like, this is who I am, and I couldn't be who I am without any of it, right?
Right.
I had that journey. So you holding on to unforgiveness breaks my heart. You're not being noble for me, right? Your forgiveness is for you. It isn't saying it was okay, but it is understanding God's plan. My mom's still devout Catholic. I go, every single time you don't, you're arguing with Jesus. Right? Like you go to him and you say, what would he tell you to do?
Yeah.
And she goes, I know, but it's so hard. And I'm like, it's hard if you say so.
Right.
And we're working on it.
Well, no, I think, and that's the essence sometimes of spirituality. The path is short, but it's a complex process to get through it. Sometimes we can't just move forward and just walk it because it's more complicated than that, even if it's really simple.
Right.
And, you talked a lot about forgiveness. You talked about non-judgment of yourself and others. And so, I mean, it's that theme of letting go, right? And we talked about letting go of attachments that were attached.
That's another great book, by the way.
Yeah. There's all these good books out there.
I know.
I not enough time to read them all.
Yeah, Letting Go by David Hawkins is really good.
Yeah, it really is. So you're a coach and a guide, and you obviously have insight into kind of what works to live this better life, not just a spiritual life, but this practical human existence that we're kind of navigating, which is sometimes complicated. What keeps you yourself grounded in your day-to-day?
I would say my kids, my connection to my kids. I think that I think we're all here to be world changers. And I remember that even though they're in their 30s, that they're still watching.
Right.
And they keep me honest. In fact, having great conversations with my daughter, I tell her, I go, you know why I'm telling you this, right? And she's like, why? I go, I'm outing myself. Like, if I tell you these things that I know are happening and brewing and that I'm doing, I'm like, I'm telling you because you're my leverage, right? I'm outing myself to you because I know that I won't stay in a state that doesn't serve me if you know I'm there, because you're my leverage. Because I wouldn't do that, right? I would never ask them to do something I'm not willing to do. And so they keep me grounded right now. My mom and I are building a relationship because her focus has been her sons, and I get it. But I was just kind of the one that didn't need help. So Jessie's good, and her and I didn't connect for many years because she was always, after my first brother was killed, she obsessed over my little brother. And so I was just kind of went off on my own. And so we're coming back after so long. She's 84 now. But it's beautiful. And I happen to have them both here with me. And I'm like, there's a reason why we're all here together. And I'm like, Mom, you can help so many parents with grief, like what you've experienced. Like, I can speak to it from a sister losing her brothers. You can speak to it from a mother. I don't even want to know what that's like. Knock on wood, it never happens for me. Right. But there's a groundedness that I also feel having her here, because even though I'm kind of the anomaly, I always say I was switched at birth. I'm the wrong baby. I don't know how I ended up in this family, but I also feel that I'm meant to be the beacon. I'm meant to be the chain breaker. And there's been aspects of her now that's opened up to seeing things differently. And I call her a warrior. I'm like, you are a warrior, Mom. What you have witnessed, what you have been through, like, oh my gosh. So we're kind of looking at the lineage of women here, and we're like, okay, if we're here, then we're meant to do something with this. So that's how I would answer that. I think those 4 people are everything to me.
Well, that's a lovely answer, and I think it really speaks to you kind of change the whole world by changing yourself, and you lift up everybody around you, and you talk about being that beacon of light. And I think, people see that, and it does change the world. It changes the people around us in such a positive way.
Well, it's like asking the question, when we start to think like, who am I? I'm just one person. And,
Right.
How many people was Martin Luther King?
Right.
How many people was Mother Teresa? All it takes is
Right.
one.
It absolutely is. It's true. And I think understanding that it's inspirational, and it says that if you can go out and live your purpose, whatever your purpose is, whoever is out there, then they can go make a difference the same way.
That's
And
right.
it's completely changed everything. I feel like we could sit here and talk for probably a really long time. Um, but is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you think that people need to hear?
Oh my gosh, so much.
Everything.
um, but I think that we've kind of hit the point. Like, don't stay stuck. Don't stay stuck. Like, I think that when we can get into our mindset and our own inner chatter, we start to think that we're just that one person, and who am I to blah blah blah, right? But you matter. You matter. Like, you matter. Wherever you are right now, you're listening, you're sitting, wherever you are, you matter to the whole,
Right.
because we are all part of the whole. And when you heal you, you heal the whole. And when you come to that purity of like that raw beauty that I was talking about, like, you now create healing for others just by walking in the room. Right? When I talk about the vibrational frequency of our heart, like when you're in that space of love, self-love so much, like you hear the birds chirping, you feel the breeze on your face, you feel the warmth of the sun, you notice the little things that are magnificent that are happening all day long. And when you don't, you're noticing the traffic, you're noticing the barista was rude, or what, just like whatever you look for, you will find.
Right.
So look for the love, look for the good. And I'll close with this. It's a quote by Mr. Rogers that I love. Back when 9/11 happened, and those airplanes were hitting the buildings, parents were watching that on CNN, on the news, like over and over and over again. The children were scared. They're like, what's happening? So Mr. Rogers gets down on their level and he says to them, whenever there is chaos, there is always helpers. Look for the helpers. And I love that because, again, it's like that's the same for me. What I say, look for the light in even the darkest moments, because it's always there. It's the polarity of life. It's the universal law, but we're not taught to seek it. And when you think your past doesn't equal your future, you're wrong. It does. There's a beautiful soul that got back up. We're just not taught to see that. We only see our pain. But if you don't look for the gift in the pain, that's all you will see.
That's amazing insight. And I hope that people can take that and carry it with them, because it really is this thing that means that there is always light. There's always hope. There's always a way. And,
always.
We've had your link scrolling through most of the episode here. Why don't you tell us about your website and anything else that you'd like the audience to know?
Well, my website is to get on a phone call with me. Like, it's a free call. I would love to connect and see how I can best support you. And it talks about in there what my purpose is and why I'm here. But there's a couple of other things that I'm really passionate about. One is Army of Angels. Army of Angels is a leadership mastermind. And my outcome there is to bring benevolent souls into the world to come together and give back to the world. So it's a me, we, they concept. So first we start with the individual. Where are you not sovereign? Where in the pie of life are you not out of 10? I've known so many coaches throughout the years. Let's get you support to move the needle, right? Let's get you strong. The we part is we come together as a collective and we look at where do we want to put our focus in the world. So for me, it's a boots on ground. We're not writing a check to the Make-A-Wish Foundation because we don't even know if the children get the money. We are actually sending 10 people to Lahaina during the fires. We're holding the hand of a wounded warrior that doesn't have family. We're doing things on the ground, and then we go out and do it. And so my outcome is to really help awaken the human spirit, come into be embodied of who you are, and now let's lead and help humanity move forward. And then the last thing is something that was a total inspired thing that came down during a medicine ceremony. And it was to spread love around the world, right? So spread this veil of love. And my vision was that I ascended into the sky, and I spread this, the people on earth were fighting, and I spread this veil and it fell on earth and people stopped fighting. They were like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't know why I was hitting you. What happened? They snapped out of this hypnotic rhythm of killing each other. So I come out of that medicine journey and I'm like, okay, that's great, but what do I have to die? Like, how do I do this? Right. And it wasn't until 2 years later. And it's the website is spreadboldlove.com. And what it is, it's a t-shirt company. Basically, it's not about the t-shirt. What it is when we go to a concert, let's say, right, you buy the t-shirt. Why do you do that? You want everybody to know you went to the concert. I went to the John Bon Jovi concert. Look at me, right? And so when somebody wears a t-shirt that says, like, kindness matters, you immediately think differently, just a little bit about that person, right? It's just like, oh, that's kind of cool that they bought that. And so it's light warriors. That's what it says on the t-shirt. And here's the science, though. The outcome is you buy a t-shirt, you gift a t-shirt. Okay, there's an app and everything. When you gift the t-shirt, you record a video to whoever it is you're sending it to, saying, hey, we're thinking about you, wanted you to have this t-shirt. When they get the t-shirt, they have a barcode on their sleeve. They scan the barcode. It takes them to download the app and get to your message. Now, when that happens, it triggers a pin on the map so that you can see where your gift is in the world. So let's say I send it to somebody in Peru, where my family is, right? So they get it, they receive it, it comes back to me. I'm like, oh, they got their gift, cool. Now they love it forward, and they send it to a friend in Japan. So now that friend opens his box. Now the person that sent it to him gets a ping on their phone, and the person that sent it to the person before him gets a ping on the phone. So let's say you're number 500. 499 people will get a notification on their phone that tells them on the map where the gift is now in the world, right? Now, here's what's happening scientifically. Dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Oxytocin, right? We love giving gifts. We love receiving gifts. So when we talk about the vibration, here's the veil of love, right? Now serotonin, our heart's expanding. That energetic frequency is going out into the world. And when we do 10 rounds of 11 people, we have a global ceremony and we bring everybody together. It's a big dream. So that's me in a nutshell.
I love that. That's a great project. No, I definitely encourage people to go to your website, check that stuff out, get in contact with you, and be a part of that project to love it forward. I love how you say that, and make the world a better place. That's what we're all about, right? That's what we're doing.
Yes.
So thank you so much for being. You were a great guest, and so thank you so much
thank
for
you.
coming on Friday evening, and appreciate everyone watching. We're going to be back next Friday, 7 Central. Our guest is JJ Flazanes, and she's an empowerment strategist, has great energy, and we'll have another great show. So, Jessie, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, John.
And yeah,
Thank
if
you
you stick
for having
around,
me.
we'll take the live off, and maybe you and I can have a quick chat at the end here.
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.